Hi, my name is Michael, and you are listening to Catholic versus Atheist.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would please, who you are, what you believe, and how you came to believe what you believe.
Well, my name is Michael, and in more recent years, I kind of came to the conclusion that I was an atheist. My mother used to be a Byzantine Catholic nun for about, I think, 13 years, and my dad also studied at a Catholic seminary in Pittsburgh to be a priest. My father is a very interesting guy, highly educated, very well educated. For his bachelor's degree, he majored in classics and I think minored in philosophy, and he taught me logic, philosophy, and all that other stuff. When I was a kid, I used to read his old college books that he had on his shelf, and so my understanding and grasp of things theologically and philosophically was thanks to him, and reading those books was a little bit more advanced for my age to be able to grasp certain things. But in a sense, it was because of him and how he taught me that I went on my own and kind of came to the conclusion myself that to start to stray away is that, as he always told me, that one of the pillars of Catholicism is logic. And he always taught me to approach things logically. My parents, both of them, always told me, question your faith, and one of two things will happen. You'll grow stronger in your faith, or you'll split away from it. But either way, you'll find an answer to your questions. That's kind of how I viewed it. I looked at it objectively.
Interesting. Yeah, I agree with your parents. That's a good approach. I think everyone should question why they believe what they believe. But I just want to get a little bit more biography. Can you paint a little picture of some of the earliest memories that have to do with religion or with God? Can you just reach back as far as you possibly can to some of the earliest impressions, like the smell of incense at church when you were very young, or maybe being on your knees beside your bed praying with your mother or something like that? Can you talk about the earliest memories that you have related to religion, please?
Oh yeah, I mean, and a lot of them are some of my earliest and strongest memories. And as you know, Catholics go to church early in the morning, and when you're a kid, you don't like that. But my dad would wake us up. It would be like 7 a.m. in the morning on Sunday, and he's like, wake up," and I'm like, why? Why do we have to wake up? He says, we have to get to church. I'm like, 7 a.m. It doesn't start till 8. He says we got to get good seats, and I'm like, God doesn't care where you sit in the church, just as long as you're there. But my dad always found a way to be kind of, even when you're frustrated, you kind of be able to joke with it and laugh it off. But some of my earliest memories were, my earliest memory I remember, and this is clearly, and it's rare for someone to remember this far back sometimes, but this one of my few memories at this age that I have is when I was baptized. I think I was like 16 or 18 months. So it was, usually you're just a couple months old when you're baptized, but me, it was a little bit later. I remember having my head put in the water, and then him pouring water, the priest pouring water over me, and me crying, not knowing what is going on because you're having water poured on you or splashed on you. And to my knowledge, I'm trying to kick, scream, and as any child would, because you're scared and you don't know what's going on. But years after that, I mean, even though church was never a thing with me, but I do have good memories of sometimes being there because of the people that were there. And I had friends that I used to play with there, or a lot of times that after church, my family and and other parishioners would go out to breakfast at this other place. It was kind of like a every Sunday after church thing, and all that. And that was pretty nice. And yes, there was incense and a lot of things. I do remember Christmas or Easter vigils or something like that. A lot of the strongest memories are tied to important events, whether it's secular or not. Like the Mass is tied with Christmas, so that's going to be you're going to associate that, and it's going to be part of your memory. Same with Easter Vigil. I sometimes helped my dad build a fire pit at the church that was part of the Easter Vigil we had there, and burning of the palms for Ash Wednesday or something like that. But especially my dad made it an effort to kind of make it memorable, so it influences us, and it influences me in a certain way to be able to develop. I mean, when I was growing up, I remember he used to always take me to do certain things, whether it was religious or not, classical music concerts, plays like the Pirates of Penzance, and different things like that. years later, I asked him, why did you take me to all those things? He said, I wanted to culture you. I wanted you to be aware that there is a world outside of where you live. And these are the things that are part of that. And including Catholicism is full of it. And it is full of that as well. And he wanted to, because where I live, in all honesty, where I live presently is, like I said, the moonshine capital of the world. I mean, probably back in the 60s, some people that would work in the factories here didn't even know how to write their name. So you have, in a rural area, there's not very much opportunity for a lot of blue-collar people. And one of the things is my parents come from Pennsylvania, and Dad's Pittsburgh side, about an hour and a half south of Pittsburgh. My mom's from the other side of the state, and there's a lot more culture up there. There's a lot more mixture of different, let's say, different sects and different wings of the Catholic Church, Orthodox faiths from my mom's side, and you have, and different things. You have different influences because you have different cultures, different countries, and people from different cultures. Things coming together. Down the further south you go, the less that is. I mean, my mother used to be able to speak and read Russian, and because her parents are Russian, but when she came down here, over the course of the years, she lost the language because there's no one here to speak it. The only people here were at the time in '78 were the Dukes of Hazzard people there. But that's what it was like. But I grew up with a sharp contrast to that and teaching me a lot. My dad used to be a Latin teacher, so that couples with the Catholic Church there and all this different stuff. So when I went outside to play with friends, or when I went outside to go to school or something, I was always kind of outside of it, because what my mom and dad taught me was from a different part of the United States, or a much different area than what these kids were used to. I mean, where my parents were from, you had culture, you had education, a lot of focus on that, a lot more than down here. But
how old are you today, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, I'm 29 years old.
Okay. Are you an only child?
No, I grew up with two older sisters. They were kind of like me in a sense that, except they're more bold and straightforward and in your face about it than I was. Mine was kind of like a slow, gradual shift away from religion as far as them. They were just like kick in the front door and say, "Hey, look, I'm here." But especially my middle sibling, my older sister, holy crap, when she was mad, everybody knew it. This was a girl that was always in your face. But when it came to religion with them, because one thing about my parents is that they were also, it was also kind of like, you have to do it. You have to go to church. You have to do this. The choice was never given. It was always it's not a democracy, it's a dictatorship. But speak softly and carry a big stick here. But no, it was kind of like that. It was like, you have to go. You are going to go. And that forcefulness is kind of what clashed with my two older sisters' personalities, especially my middle sister and older sister. And it's kind of like when you force, that's the problem. One of the problems with, not the problem with religion, but the problem with people who try to administer it into a society or anything. When you force something, I mean, you can see like with the Roman Empire or anything else, when you force something, people fight back. People will rebound if it's not something that you can gradually introduce into their society and let them come to a conclusion as to where to actually take them by the shoulder, sit them down and say, here you go, this is your life from now on. But my older sister, she was the first to go away. She was like, nope. She was the first one to do it. I remember my oldest sister, I'm the youngest of three, but my oldest sister, she never had a religious bone in her body. Her personality was that was just focused around her. It wasn't anything like any religious. I mean, when I looked at the Catholic faith from what my dad taught me, it was academic. He approached it from an interesting way, and it was not a religious, like a faithful way. That was my mother. I mean, that was my mother. That was. I remember we had in the Byzantine Catholic faith, which is Catholic, but it's probably more related to the Orthodox in its imagery and how they do things. I had like an icon here. I think one of it was Saint Michael sitting on my dresser, and the other one was a picture of you've probably seen the picture before of a guardian angel watching over two kids walking over a rickety bridge. I had one of those there. I had a crucifix in my room. I don't know any other Catholic that didn't have a crucifix in their room. But I remember she was more like not the logical side of it, like my dad, logical, and well, she was the more faith-based. Don't always think about something. Sometimes it's just you have to believe and have faith in something. She's more of the faith-based. My dad was more the academic and logical side. So, but that was in a sense that's a good balance of things. It balanced itself out. But my dad always approached with an academic sense, like which was easier for me to grasp. It's like it's easier to answer itself. It's easier to approach certain questions that way. Like did God flood the earth and all that other stuff? Well, if you believe that, Noah and all that other stuff, yeah, okay, sure. And then it says the waters receded, and then there was land and all that. Now, the academic side of me and the logical thinking would say, okay, if the entire world is covered in water, where did the water recede to? If there was nothing but water around anywhere, how did the water dissipate? Where did it recede to? Like, if you're on a beach, at the night, the tide comes in, the water rises, and during the day, it recedes back into the ocean. But if there's water, if the whole planet's covered in water for miles and high, there's no place for it to recede to. This has always perplexed me. My dad was always kind of an enigma to me, because I asked him, I said, Dad, do you believe the story, this stuff in the Bible? It's focusing more on the Old Testament than the New, but still in general. He said they're just a collection of stories put together. I can never get a yes or no direct answer out of him, which is interesting, and but yet he still believes God. He still believes God exists and stuff like that. And growing up Catholic to me was kind of odd to me, because I remember my mom telling me one time, and I'm sorry to go off topic here, but my mom telling me this kind of triggered a memory, but I was in my room, I was about to go to sleep, and this was the middle of summertime, and I was about to go to sleep. My mom was telling me about the devil, and this scared the crap out of me, what she told me, but I don't think she realized that I don't understand metaphor, but at the time, but she said the devil can come in through your window only if you leave it open. She was talking about the window to your soul, not the actual window that I kept shut because of that reason. One hot summer, the whole 2 months. So that was one hot summer, because I was a kid, because I opened the window. I was afraid if I opened the window for even a second, someone was going to come in and get me. But religion to me, as I've started to stray away from it, I've used logic, and I've used the reason to be like, one, the Bible, like especially the Old Testament, because Holy Mary, Mother of God, that's just a horror show of things. I mean, God, if you say He's omnipotent, if you say He's omniscient and omnipotent and all that, you can't really attach any human emotion to Him or any number to Him, because logically, if you're, let's just say He does exist, it wouldn't make any sense to attach it to Him. I mean, the fact that He created the earth and all that in 6 days is complete garbage, because, I mean, it says He rested on the seventh. Why would a being that's omnipotent need to rest? And two, why would He need to take Him 6 days to create something or think of it when He's omniscient? He could just snap His fingers and all it's done in a small amount of time that's immeasurable to humans here. But
yeah, he's not in time at all. He created time out of nothing, right? So you need to understand that there's a literary technique that's employed in the Bible called attribution or condescension, where we put words into God's mouth and actions into God that don't properly belong to God, but it's just a nice way of making the story a little bit more palatable. And so if you read any of the early church fathers, they were at least as smart as you are and just as logical, if not more than you are. And they knew that God does not get angry.
He's not, I don't think He would be all loving.
Well, the first principle in any monotheistic religion is God is infinite in every perfection. So He is incapable of any evil ever. So all of the saints interpret Scripture this way.
Well, this could be a literary technique that they use, but I tend to write it. But I would say he said in the first person, I created good and evil. One is, I don't think God is omnibenevolent in the sense, in a loving sense, because with love comes jealousy as well. But I would, if I were to go back and be a religious person, I would say he's not omnibenevolent, but he would be all understanding. That way you can approach something without having that contradiction and the things. Oh, I'm all loving, but I tell you to go and murder these bunch of Midianites or something like that. That doesn't fit. But if you say I'm all understanding, you still can't justify that. But you can say, oh, this person did something bad. But you can equate it to like a judge or a court saying, we understand that you've committed this crime out of an emotion or out of something like that. We understand that, but you still committed the crime. You still broke the law, so you still have to be punished. But you approach from a different angle rather than all loving and kind of showing in the same book that you have a nasty and evil side.
This is the problem of evil, yeah.
The only thing allows evil to prevail is for good men to do nothing. You kind of apply that sense here. I mean,
but God's not a man. The reason that God allows so much evil is that he is omnipotent. He can bring a higher good out of evil. And if you read the saints throughout the past 2,000 years, you'll see a lot of them emphasizing the fact that the evil that God allows here below that outrages us and that makes us so shocked and horrified, if we put it into perspective with heaven, the heaven that awaits us, even the worst life here on earth, it's only 100 years long. It's not a big deal. And it's like one uncomfortable night at a bad tavern. It's just not really that big of a deal. And once you get to heaven, you'll put it into perspective and you'll see that what we think is outrageous and shocking and horrible here and too much to bear is really not that much to handle. And if we can just be patient and get through this short life, we will see once we're in heaven that all these evils here really are not that significant. Whereas if we don't freely choose to return God's love, we'll end up in hell, not because God is banishing us to hell, but because by not loving God, what we're doing is we're orienting ourselves away from God and we're choosing not to go to heaven. And to not go to heaven is not very pleasant. And if you're oriented away from God, to be in heaven would be even more painful. So hell is a merciful place for those that hate God, those that don't want to be with God, those that don't want to be in heaven. So it's a merciful place where those who hate God are allowed to fall away from him for all eternity. So God is not evil and he's not the source of any evil ever. That's the number one principle. I just want you to trust me when I say that.
If you're going to try and prove God exists, the Bible, let alone the Quran or anything else, is probably one of the worst ways to do it when it comes to justifying it or anything.
No. The Bible is only for those who are fully convinced of the goodness of God. Anyone else that looks at it is just going to be turned off totally.
Well, but faith in itself is not fact. Otherwise, if it was fact, it wouldn't be called faith. It would just be called fact.
Yeah, you need faith. You need faith, but you need faith even to believe in the real world, that the material world exists, right? So you have to acknowledge that we all have taken a leap of faith, some more than others, but we all do take that leap of faith because there is absolutely no experiment that we could come up with that would verify that these alleged sense perceptions through which we allegedly perceive sight and sound and smell and touch, we have no way of testing the validity of these alleged sense perceptions because the very tests that we would devise rely on those sense perceptions. So there is absolutely no way to verify that we even have a material universe that we inhabit, much less that there are other beings. For example, you and I, you're hearing my voice now, and there's absolutely no way for you to verify that that is not just an internal fantasy of yours. I'm sure you've encountered solipsism and... The Matrix is kind of, that movie when it first came out was kind of really brought that kind of thought into pop culture to everybody else to kind of question things. I guess I told my dad one time, I said, who created God or something like this, and you know the old saying, God has no beginning and no end, but yet somehow still exists. Yeah, his essence is existence.
Yeah, that whole thing, and I said, Dad, well, that's essentially something from nothing in a sense. But I said, you believe that, right? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, what if God slowly reveal, like when religious people say he slowly reveals his truths or his knowledge to us. Well, what if he slowly reveals to us that he doesn't exist? What do you do? What do you do then?
Then I'm God.
And then he said that that doesn't make sense. I said, doesn't it? I said, you're willing to believe that he has no beginning and but yet has no end, but yet still somehow exists with no beginning. But yet this thing that he slowly, this little paradox doesn't make sense to you. I said, well, one thing is if there is a God and he were to come down and say, hey, let his presence be known, I think my personal thing, belief and faith would lose its meaning, because in a sense, belief and faith is not hinged upon 100% knowledge of anything. It's hinged on hope.
What you're saying is exactly 100% what the church teaches. As you said, when we meet God, when we're confronted with God in heaven, there will be no more faith. There will be no more hope. There will only be love.
Well, not in heaven, here on earth. I mean, it's like you just pop right up right here on
yeah,
the
well,
physical
Jesus is going to come again at the end of time, so you can test your theory out, okay? Even if you're dead, you're going to pop out of your grave and you're going to see Jesus come the second time. So don't worry, you're going to have your chance to test your theory. But my point is that faith and hope will be obsolete at that moment. And it will only be love. If you have love of God unto contempt of self, that's called heaven. If you have love of self unto contempt of God, that's called hell. It's all about that orientation. Which way are you oriented with respect to your Creator? And so when God comes again, faith will be no more, hope will be no more. It will only be love. There are two cities, as St. Augustine famously said, characterized by two loves, love of self and love of God. So we need to choose wisely. We need to choose now while we have time. We need to choose to freely and rationally return God's love. I mean,
no. Are you kind of working along the lines of Pascal's wager?
No. But he also says in the Pensée, he also makes a point of saying that there are three ways that you can love and serve and fear God. You could do it as a slave with servile fear. You can do it as a mercenary. I'm going to earn my wages and I'm going to treat God like a vending machine. I put my money in, I put my prayers in, I get my golden ticket to heaven. So those two extremes are not ideal. The ideal way to love God and to serve God and to fear God is as a loving son loves a good, just, and merciful father. So it's a relationship that is respectful, it's well balanced, it's not the despair of a slave, and it's not the presumption of a hired soldier, a mercenary. It is the love of a son for a father. So this is what Pascal says in his Pensée. So that counterbalances your critique of that Pascal's wager, because these motivations are imperfect. They're very imperfect, but they are legitimate ways to begin your journey to loving God as a son would love, or as a child would love a loving parent. They're not perfect, but they are legitimate starting points. We have to give people a break because people are very broken. People are very wounded. People are confused. People are drunk, literally and figuratively. We need to give people a break. We need to give them a chance to grow up a little bit during this 100 years on earth. So don't be too hard on someone that's religious just because they fear hell and they desire heaven. Don't be too hard on them.
Well, I mean, I would joke. Well, here in the Bible Belt, you have it's Protestant all the way. But I heard this one time. I heard this many times. You said, I'm going to try and get the accent right here, but I can never do it. He says, if you don't believe in the Bible, you're going to hell. And I'm like, I look at him and I say, well, if I'm going to hell, I'm taking over. I mean, that would always be my response. And look on the face is blank. But because these people, their version of hell, and most of your, in a general sense, most of your Christians, or let alone Muslims too, think that hell is this fiery doomsday of a place, which it isn't. I mean, there's nowhere in the Bible where it says explicitly that these horrible things happen in hell, or this is what hell scenery is.
It doesn't really matter what's unpleasant about it. We just need to know that it's not very pleasant.
Well, the way it was explained to me, it was always simple, but it was always a distance from God, cold isolation and a distance from God, and that's all it is. No pitchforks in your side, and no limbs being torn from your body and all that other stuff, or demons clawing at your face. I mean, that's all divine comedy. That's all Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy in the Inferno. That's all that's where that comes in. That's where our modern concept of what hell is comes from. Let's say if you read the Bible or anything like that, or if you are told those stories, you can. I mean, it's better. You can better understand how things were written in a close similarity. Like when the Bible was translated to Greek, it was, I think, Koine Greek was the Greek that it was translated into. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of things got mistranslated over the centuries, and even millennia. Things got mistranslated, and I can tell you this: if you took the Bible and translated into Aramaic and take it all the way back to travel back in time, go meet Jesus for himself and give him the Bible, he wouldn't. I don't think he would recognize the word that's written in it, because it's been translated so many times. It's like playing the telephone thing. It starts at one end, you say a word, and it gets all the way around, and the next kid is going to say it, but he's only going to repeat something that he or she only heard, but he's not going to critique it. He's just going to, it just naturally changes. That's why he wouldn't recognize it, in a sense.
Everything that we need to know to be saved is properly interpreted by the living magisterium of the church. That means the Pope and the bishops who teach in union with him, and the whole church throughout the 2,000 years since Christ. It is infallible. It's this infallibility that is key. And if you don't have infallibility, then yeah, it's just a hot mess, like broken telephone game. But at the end of my interviews, I just ask my guests to give a little closing thought, something positive. So just to close the show, what do you think that you might be able to say to anyone that's out there listening now, please?
Well, for me, I would say, if you yourself are religious, whatever religion you are, Hindu, Buddhist, Catholic, Muslim, Protestant, Christian in general, do what my parents told me: objectively question your faith and your religion and your religion itself. No matter what, it may stray you away from it, or it may stray you more towards into it and make you more resolved and stronger. But if you question that, as for the same thing for people like me, atheist or secular or anything like that, I would say do the same thing, but with life itself. Always question objectively. Don't accept what's been told to you. Don't accept always this. If you question things, whether it's life, whether it's your own religion, or anything in general, always question it, because other paths that you go down, if you're religious, if you question your religion and you find yourself straying away from your religion, you turn out like me, like becoming atheist or secular, then that's all right too. Or you can go the other way and make your faith stronger, but you will find answers that you are looking for, or you'll find answers that you weren't looking for, but you didn't know were there, but you just found, and answer questions that you probably didn't question, if that makes sense. In general, when it comes to religion, or when it comes to anything in real life or in general, always question, always be skeptical, and always use your head and think.
If you like your worldview, if you think it's swell, if you've got some questions, ask me and I'll tell. All you got to do is ask. All you got to do is